Happy Easter, everybody. I'm Simon Sefzik. I'm your new state senator here in Whatcom County in the 42nd Legislative District. I was appointed back in January after Senator Doug Erickson passed away. And on a great day like this, it is an honor to be with each one of you and to spend some time answering some of the questions that some of you sent ahead of time. And then I'm also super excited to answer some of the questions that you may have for me right now live. So without further ado, I'm happy to jump into the first question that got sent in earlier. And that question was from Debbie. And Debbie was wondering about the status of long-term health care and the specific act that got passed. And what can citizens do to get their money? CARE Act got delayed in this legislative session. Governor Inslee in December announced sort of a halt to it, and then the legislature officially voted to delay it until next year. And there's a lot of problems, I think, with the long-term health care proposal. You know, for those of you who don't know, it's sort of a tax on every $100 earned. And the idea with it is that at some point after 10 years or 3 years after some sort of serious accident potentially, you'll have access to certain financial amounts for the provision of long-term care. So to help with things like eating, for example, or something like that. And the maximum amount of money you can get is around $36,000. So there's a lot of different problems with this proposal. It's something that many people have pointed out, said that there's going to be issues with it. And sure enough, it seems to be that there's a bipartisan consensus that the Long-Term Care Act, as currently worded, does not work. It's insolvent, and it's not going to make it any easier for people to actually get good long-term health care, but it's also not a good way to tax the citizens individually. And so what can citizens do to get their money back? Well, I think that we should not keep the Long-Term Health Care Act in the way that it exists in its current form, and I think some way to delay it and then some way to potentially replace it or find better private market alternatives is going to be a much better way for citizens to get a bang for their buck. So thank you very much for the question, Debbie. The next question that we received that I'm happy to answer has to do with the main priority for me that I'm going to have coming into the next session. And that's also a very, very good question that I have in terms of, the main legislative priority is to understand what the people in Whatcom County are really focused on right now. And as I'm knocking doors all over the county, as I'm getting coffees with different constituents, I'm hearing a lot of similar themes. And those themes are that pricing seems to keep rising. Goods are getting more and more expensive. Inflation is at 8.5%. And despite the rising costs that so many people are feeling all across Washington, it doesn't feel like the government is returning any value in that way. And so I think what we need to do is, rather than spending every single dollar that we have in our budget, we need to find new ways to provide tax relief. For example, in this past legislative session, we had about a $15 to $16 billion budget surplus, and not a single penny of it really went to individual tax relief. That, to me, is extraordinarily disheartening, especially at a time when the price of gas and groceries are continuing to rise. We needed to make meaningful action on tax relief, and we didn't. But one of the other common things that I'm hearing from people across Whatcom County is just that they want Whatcom County to be a safe place, and they don't feel like they have that right now in Whatcom County. A lot of it has to do with the lack of a jail facility here that is able to meet the demands in the county and for rising populations and increasing crime. And another part of it has to do with, quite frankly, the bad legislation that got passed in the 2021 legislative cycle. And we're still going to be dealing with some of the issues from that. We didn't make some of the progress that we needed to make to undo the damage from 2021. So going into the next legislative session, I'm going to be really focused on returning affordability to the average Washingtonian, promoting public safety, and ultimately restoring trust in government. The third question is, what is currently happening regarding working towards the flooding issues? And that's also a question that I'm hearing constantly, and it's a really good one. What is being done? The first step, I think, for us at the legislative level was to secure some level of financial relief to individuals and to businesses that suffered from the flooding. And I'm happy to report that was a bipartisan effort. And we were able to secure millions of dollars to the victims of flooding and to businesses that have been affected from the flooding. But I think we need to think long term about what to do in the future. If I have children one day, we need to think about the kind of area that they're going to live in. What will the Nooksack River look like years and years down the road? And what will it look like even this coming November? And in order to answer that question, I think we need to look at ways to better engage in water storage. And I think that has to be a big part of the answer. And then second, I think we need some level of river management. And we need to work with the different stakeholders to ensure that the process is effective for all the parties involved. So in terms of what's being done currently, there's different action being taken regarding studying the Nooksack River, but I personally think we need to be doing more. We need to be taking more aggressive steps in working with the different groups, and we need both engagement from the local county council, and we also need engagement from the different agencies in the governor's office to be willing to work with us on some of these issues as we figure out what will work best for the different residents of Whatcom County. The next question is, how can we address affordable housing at the state level? And can we get some choice back in the type of housing that we live in? And the follow-up question is, how do the current restrictions affect families and family values? So thank you, Charles, for asking that question. You know, in terms of affordable housing, this is a huge issue, and it's also one of my large priorities as I enter the next legislative session, because it affects so many people in my generation especially. We love Whatcom County. We grew up here in Whatcom County, and we want to stay here in Whatcom County. But the odds of us being able to do so in an affordable manner, the odds of us being able to move on and buy a home here in Whatcom County, which is the American dream. You know, the American dream is to be able to one day purchase and own a home in this country. And that option seems to be slipping further and further away for the average Washingtonian and Whatcom County resident. And, you know, there's a lot of reasons for that. Partly is we have a great location here in Whatcom County. You know, we're between two beautiful mountains and a whole bunch of salt water. We're in between two very large cities. And that means that there's a lot of attraction to this area. But we need to find ways to increase the supply of housing. And I think one of the first ways we can do that is by making it easier to build homes. And I think that means changing a lot of the permitting restrictions that we have and bringing down costs so that builders are actually able to build homes here in Whatcom County in an affordable manner. And that also means expanding the amount of land availability that we have to build on. So thank you for the question. Another question that we just got was, what do you do? What do I do for fun or for recreation? And what do I enjoy about the Pacific Northwest? Well, Shannon, thank you for the question. It's another great one. You know, I grew up here in Whatcom County. I love it here. The fact that I can go skiing on one day and see the ocean on another day, two things that I like to do. I love to ski. I've tried snowboarding and I'm horrible at it, so I'll probably stick with skiing for now. But, you know, I love to ski. I love to play ultimate frisbee. I love to play spike ball in the summertime. And, you know, Whatcom County provides so many avenues for us to do that. And so there's some of the things I like to do outdoorsy for recreation. I think I posted about it on Facebook a while back. I like chess personally. Chess to me is a super fun game. I like other various board games. I like to read books. And I like to just have fun conversations with my friends. I also like to watch different movies. I actually really enjoy horror movies. And so I don't know what you think of that fact. Maybe some people will be scared away by that fact, but I'll admit that I really enjoy horror movies. So yeah, there was another question that somebody asked me. Ted just asked me to elaborate on the bill to limit Governor Inslee's emergency powers. Ted, thank you for the question. The bill that you're referring to, there was a bill this legislative session that gained some traction. That was Senate Bill 5909. Now, Senate Bill 5909 was, what I would say, a baby step in regards to emergency powers reform. here's what I think about emergency powers. I do not think that this should be a partisan issue. I don't think that it matters whether the governor is a Republican or a Democrat. I think that the job of the legislature, historically and systematically, has been to act as a check and a balance to executive authority. And so the legislature's job is to ensure that the governor does not overstep when it comes to emergency powers. That's the traditional design of government. I think the last 2 years have shown us, unfortunately, what happens when there is not meaningful emergency powers reform and when there isn't any effective check on emergency powers, because we're more than 700 days into technically a state of emergency with no known end in sight. That's really dangerous. And so Senate Bill 5909 was a bill that did actually end up making it out of the Senate. I voted for it, and the reason I voted for it is for the same reason, if you've ever gone to an eye doctor, you know how when they're doing a test on you, they might say, is this better, is this worse? Is this better, is it worse? And I would say that that bill was slightly better than the status quo, because the status quo is nothing. But it still didn't take the action that I think we should have taken regarding emergency powers reform. Unfortunately, however, to your question, Ted, that bill died in the House of Representatives after only about 25 to 30 minutes of debate on the House floor. I think it was put on the House floor at about 1 a.m., and after some of the Republicans provided different amendment ideas to the bill, the bill was pulled from the calendar and there was no further debate on it. So here we are going into another year where we're not seeing any action on emergency powers reform, and I think that that is deeply troubling. Okay, so another question that I just got is, will Elon Musk, presumably, buy Twitter? That is a great question. I try to avoid Twitter as much as I can, but it has obviously been in the news recently, and will he buy Twitter? I don't know, quite frankly, and I think, it's always hard to tell. I think Elon Musk is a very innovative person and an exciting person, and so it's always hard for me to know sometimes on some of these things whether people are just saying those things to generate attention or whether he's serious. My understanding is that he did put in a bid to buy Twitter, but who knows if that'll end up happening, and who knows what the results will be of that. Isaiah asked me, what kind of music do you like and what's on my Spotify random? That is actually a great question, and I will check right now and see if I go. Okay, so if I hit Spotify random, the first song that came up was Oh Darling by the Beatles. So I do like the Beatles. I feel like I like 60s, 70s, 80s music a lot, but probably one of my favorite songs is my favorite artist is John Denver, and probably something like This Old Guitar. That's probably my favorite song. But I like older music, but I also actually really like country western music. But I don't know. I like all kinds of music. I feel like I have a fairly diverse taste of music, and I take great pride in that fact. The next question, asked by Oliver, is what is the average age in the Senate? That is a great question. If I was better at math right now, I could maybe Google the ages and quickly come up with a number in my head, but I guess all I will say about that is the average age in the Senate is much, much higher than my age. Maggie just asked, what are some of your hobbies? What things do you like to do in your free time? I sort of answered that question earlier, but when I'm in right now, I've exited the legislative session in Olympia, so I'm here in Ferndale, and typically I'm very busy, but I do try to fit in an hour typically before I go to bed of some way to relax, and that typically is either through watching a comfort TV show like The Office, or what I need to get better at that I'm trying to do right now is reading a book. So I'm actually reading a very interesting book right now on the life of John F. Kennedy, but typically I try to read a little and watch a little and then sleep peacefully at night. I feel like that's a bad answer because I basically just said that my hobbies are to sleep. But, you know, sometimes that's the best you can hope for. Maggie also asked, what did you think your chance was on becoming a senator for the 42nd District? That is a great question. And when I was appointed to the Washington State Senate, I was not expecting to get picked at all by the Whatcom County Council. I would have given myself about a 10% chance. So I did not think that my odds were very good. But here we are. So it's been very, very surreal. It has been the honor of a lifetime to get to represent the people of Whatcom County, and not something that I ever thought I would be doing at this age. So thank you for the question. Paul just asked, what are your feelings on developing an Alaska-style salmon hatchery, which would bring more wild fish back to the Salish Sea to support tribal and state fishermen? Paul, I think that's a very interesting question. It's something that I need to look into a little bit more, but I've had some different meetings on this subject exactly. And I think, you know, we need to have sort of a multi-pronged approach with ways that will encourage both sort of more naturally produced wild salmon, and additionally finding ways to promote the use of hatcheries. And so I think that will involve working with different tribal fishermen and commercial fishermen on the best ways to incentivize and increase our salmon population. But it's something that I think is very exciting as we can look towards innovative ways to expand salmon into the Salish Sea. And I believe I just got a text message regarding a question, and the question is, the Growth Management Act needs revisiting. Any plans? And that was a message from Ken. Ken, thank you for the question. The Growth Management Act, I think, you know, is a bill obviously that changed sort of the way planning was conducted when the bill was passed in 1990. And the Growth Management Act, I think, does need to be reworked and revisited in several different capacities. I think that the intentions of the Growth Management Act are noble, but I think at times the Growth Management Act has actually inhibited our ability in Whatcom County to plan, to grow, to develop, and to engage in various forms of affordable housing. And so I think that it's something the legislature is going to continue to consider. There's sort of a lot of different ideas as to how to deal with the Growth Management Act. There was one proposal this legislative session that would have involved adding salmon recovery specifically to the Growth Management Act as a new element. And, you know, while I think the, again, intentions of that bill may be noble and that specific idea, I think that that would end up actually harming our ability at times to grow and to develop in places like Whatcom County and to develop across the state. So great question, and I think it's going to be an ongoing conversation. I just got a text about another question, and the question is, do you know how much money the district, Whatcom County, contributes to state coffers? And that message came from, I believe it might be pronounced Michelle, but if I'm wrong, I apologize. Great question. And the answer is no. I don't personally know off the top of my head how much our county contributes in state coffers, but I will tell you this. I think that the amount that we contribute to the budget in Olympia is not proportional to the amount of money that we receive oftentimes in Whatcom County. And one of the reasons I think that we know that was seeing some of the proposals that came out of Olympia this past legislative session. For example, the transportation package. One of the proposals was a 6-cent export fuel tax on every gallon of fuel that's exported to another state. That essentially would have been a tax. And depending on different estimates or researchers that you listen to, some say it would have been about a $1 billion tax, if not more, on Whatcom County refineries alone. So about a $1 billion tax, and in return, and that proposal at first, the initial proposal, there was only about $8 million going to our district in transportation funding. So think about how disproportional that is. A $1 billion tax, and in return about $8 million of transportation funding. But you know, I think that's one of the unfortunate realities of living in Whatcom County in the district that we're in. And it's the fact that Seattle-type thinking, or I think some people have called it before, space needle politics, unfortunately dictates too much of our way of life in Whatcom County. And so I think we need to always have somebody, like I've done in the legislature and like I'm going to continue to do, that is fighting and asking first and foremost, what is best for Whatcom County? And when we ask ourselves that question, I think it totally changes some of the proposals and bills that oftentimes get supported and passed that don't end up helping Whatcom County, but instead that disproportionately affect and go to affecting Seattle and Tacoma. Another question I think I just saw was, what do you think of President Biden coming to Washington? Is it just to have a play date with Governor Inslee? And I don't know. I haven't really thought of a specific opinion on President Biden coming to Washington. I will have to see how that meeting goes, and you can ask me again when we get the chance. And, you know, I think what we do need is strong collaboration between the state government, the governor's office, and the federal government. So I'm not sure what the specific fruit will be from that meeting, but I certainly hope that it's more than just a photo op. Another question I just got from Callie is, do you think we will be forced to buy electric cars in the future and switch our homes to electricity? Well, I think that's a fantastic question, Callie. And the answer is, I hope not. You know, I certainly hope not. I think that people should have choice in terms of energy policy. If somebody would like to buy a gas vehicle, they should be allowed to, and the market should allow them to, and the government should. And if they would like to buy an electric vehicle, they should be able to do that as well. My worry is that at times government regulation will force us to move to some sort of electric future before our electric grids, and I think that's what your question partly was addressing, would be able to handle that. You know, we've seen in other areas like California where there have been basically blackouts where the electricity grid can't handle the demand on the grid, and as a result, there isn't a sufficient supply of power. There was a bill, actually, a bipartisan bill that recently got vetoed, unfortunately, by Governor Inslee, and it would have at least provided some mechanism to study our current capacity of our electric grid to determine sort of exactly the question that you're asking, what our electric grid will be able to handle. And unfortunately, the governor vetoed that bipartisan bill, which I just think is extraordinarily unfortunate. I mean, I think if we're going to move towards this future through government policy, it's at least a future that we should try to understand and try to study. And that's not something that we're going to be able to do when the governor is blocking bills that I think would allow us to better understand a lot of these subjects. So I very much will oppose any effort to try to force consumers to buy products that don't work for them, especially like being forced to buy an electric car when our electric grid simply can't handle something like that. So thank you very much for the question. Let's see, I'm getting a couple more questions. One of the questions I got is, should there be a natural gas ban? And how will this be more affordable for us? That is a question that just came from Andy. And the answer is no, there should not be a natural gas ban, and it will not be more affordable if that were to happen. I mean, this is something, when we have, like we have in Washington State, a housing affordability crisis, when it's already extraordinarily difficult and expensive to build a home, to purchase a home, one of the worst things I think that we could do is force us into something like a natural gas ban that will only increase the cost of housing when, again, the market cannot adjust or handle something like that yet. So I'll oppose any of those efforts, and I hope that my colleagues will oppose those types of efforts as well. One of the other questions I just got from Alicia is, what do you think about having more choice in education, and should parents have the say, and should the money follow the backpack? Alicia, thank you for the question. Yes, I think there does need to be more choice in education. And it's actually something that Representative Alicia Rule has talked about before that I agree with, which is that the money does need to follow the backpack, and we do need more choice in education. You know, I think we do need to look at ways, whether it's private school options, charter school options, homeschooling options, to provide more choice and opportunity for our students. At the same time, we need to make sure that our public schools are providing an excellent education with great variety of choices and academic rigor, so that both our public schools and our private schools are equipping Washington State students to be able to compete not just against other states, but to be able to lead our country in a quality education. And ultimately, our hope is that our students in this country will be able to lead the world in providing a quality education and in the education that they receive at the primary level and at the college level as well. Another question that I just got is, as it is loading up, what has been one of your favorite moments while campaigning so far? And that is a question that came from Ryan. And Ryan, there's a lot of different moments that I think I could think of. You know, there have been a lot of surreal moments being all of a sudden the Washington State Senator here. Obviously, again, I have to mention very sad circumstances for the reason I'm here. And Senator Doug Erickson was somebody that cared deeply for his community and for Whatcom County. And he was a fighter, and he knew how to fight, and he knew what to fight about. And so, you know, I have to mention that. But in terms of, I would say probably one of my favorite moments while campaigning was a few weeks ago, and I posted about it on Facebook, getting to meet an individual who, his name, I believe it's pronounced Vasily, but I could be wrong on that. But he is just an incredible man who told me with tears in his eyes about being raised in communist Russia, that him and his family were sent to Siberia to a work camp when he was just a boy. And it was there in the frozen hell that he would lose his mother, but he eventually was able to escape out of Siberia, worked in Russia for a time, and when the Berlin Wall fell, he moved to Italy, and then he immigrated back to America, you know, this land that he had heard of where people are free. And when I think about his story, all the things in his life that he has seen and all that he's experienced, I can't help but think of just how proud I am to be an American. It's getting to meet with people all over the community, getting to hear their stories, whether they come from Whatcom County, whether they've been a fifth-generation resident of Whatcom County, or whether they moved here a few months ago, whether they came here from every corner of the globe, from India or from Mexico or from Russia or Ukraine. It has been just incredible to get to hear the tapestry of people that are in Whatcom County. Now, I'm getting a couple more questions that I will address. One of the questions I just got from Ken is, what will be your position if the governor decides to impose lockdown or mandatory vaccines or mask mandates if the virus has a resurgence? And the answer is, I will not be in favor of those things. I think that the data has shown us partly that first of all, I guess it would depend on what we mean by the virus having a resurgence. But, you know, one of my big concerns is that we need to have proportionality. Our response has to meet the threat. And so the worry that I've had with some of these resurgences, so to speak, is that the answer, whether it's been a mandatory lockdown or some of these vaccine mandates, have not necessarily been helpful to plenty of people, and it hasn't been proportional to the alleged threat. You know, I've met with, going back to the question earlier that ties into this one of the sad things about being on the campaign trail has just been knocking on people's doors, hearing about, well, what do you do for work? Well, I'm not working right now. I haven't been able to find a job. Well, why is that? Well, because I got fired over the mandate and still haven't been rehired. And, you know, it's very hard right now for people that have a wife and kids and or spouses and children, and wondering what their future is going to hold when all of a sudden out of nowhere you have some of these mandates. A good example was, some of you may have seen in the news a few months ago when it was snowing a bit more than it is now, that, you know, there were some freeways that were pretty much piled up with snow, and there were certain Department of Transportation employees in Washington that were not able to get into a snow truck by themselves, on a snowplow by themselves because of their vaccination status. So you have people that are waiting hours and hours in line because the roads are clogged up, and you have people, employees that are willing, ready to brave the cold to go out there and clean up the roads, and the only reason they can't is because of an Olympia imposed mandate. Those types of things don't make people safer, but they do make people's lives harder, and that's why I would be opposed if we saw more of those mandates coming. And here's the one final comment I'll make about that. If we are going to see more of those mandates, they are certainly things that should be checked and enforced and voted upon by the legislature. What we don't need more of is executive action that goes unchecked without any legislative approval. Now, I don't think there are any other questions coming in right now, so I will sort of just close by saying thank you so much. I want to remind you all that we have a primary election coming up and we have a general election coming up. The primary is occurring in August and the general election is occurring in November. If you would ever like to talk to me directly or call me on the phone, I would love to have a conversation with you. And if you haven't had a chance, I would love it if you would go to my Facebook page and like the page, follow the page, share the page as we are trying to get the message out. You know, I've said from the very beginning, I think that what we have to worry about in Whatcom County is our future. Where are we headed? Not just a year from now, but 5 years from now, 10 years from now, several decades from now. We are approaching a time in American history that I think will truly test us. It will test our resolve, our vigilance, whether we, in our moment of danger and in our moment of calling, we're willing to step up and to do our part into improving our country and improving our future. That's something that I'm excited to be a part of, but it's not something that I can do alone. I need you. I need your voice, your input, your support, so that you and I can go side by side together as we work towards making Whatcom County, Washington State, and our country better for all people. It's something that excites me every single day. It's one of the reasons I wanted to get involved with this whole process. Being young and energetic and excited about the future gives me hope that we can, despite how dark it may feel, despite how partisan things may feel, despite how polarizing things may feel right now, I think that there is light at the end of the tunnel. And I've seen from so many people, Republicans and Democrats, that are excited about this movement. One of the most inspiring things to me has been hearing from people that have told me that they haven't voted in 10 or 20 years. Maybe they've never voted before in their entire life, or maybe they're a new voter. Maybe they just turned 18 and are only now able to vote. And they're excited to be able to say that for the first time ever, or for the first time in a while, they're going to get to cast their vote for this movement. Because that's what this is. This is not about me. This is not about any one person or any one idea. This is about us. It's about our future. And it's about our ability to seize the moment, to capitalize on it, and to change Whatcom County and our state forever. So thank you all so much. I appreciate you texting me questions directly, writing me questions, and participating in this live stream. Again, if you'd ever like to talk again, please feel free to reach out. And if you are interested in donating the campaign, I certainly won't say no. So please feel free to do that as well. Thank you all so much. Have a good night and have a happy Easter tomorrow. Thank you.